r/AskReddit. Everyone has a scar on their body from something dumb they did as a child. What's your story? Been jumping on a mattress, hit the radiator, cracked my skull open. Broke a vase, tried to glue it back together with toothpaste. I left it by a bedroom door and forgot about it. Ran into the bedroom later and promptly stepped on it. You should have applied some toothpaste to the cut. Rescued a praying mantis in a steep wooded area. Fell really hard on a sharp rock and opened up my knee. The mantis was fine though. Thank God the mantis was okay. Wait, what's wrong with you again? My dad bought me a Swiss Army knife. As I was checking out one of its many blades, a bee landed on my lap and I instinctively freaked out and stabbed myself. I also had a Swiss Army knife. I tried to stab it into a piece of wood and it folded because it didn't have a lock. It cut my finger almost to the bone. It was not the smartest moment in my career. I was 5 and was sitting on the toilet. I found a razor blade, not the kind for shaving, and started playing with it. I was cutting lines into the wall when the razor slipped away from the wall. My hand had some momentum and the blade cut into my thigh. At the time, I was scared about telling mom. So I went to bed and held my finger on it. Oh, and when I was 3 or 4, I was riding underneath a grocery basket while mom was pushing. I was watching the wheel spinning fast. I went to put my finger on the wheel and it was pulled in between the wheel and metal casing. The second I was born I clawed my own face and I got a small scar. I was playing freeze dance in kindergarten, spinning around, and when the teacher said freeze I smashed my face into a table causing me to break my nose. Edit. Thank you all for the upvotes. You have no idea how happy it makes me knowing my pain caused a funny. I burned myself on a Morrison's ready meal. I was so pumped to eat my toaster strudel that I just shoved my hand into the toaster oven while it was still on like a bear pawing at a beehive. The top of my wrist hit the heat bar. Not sure what the word for this is. Dead on while it was still red hot. 18 years later. It's a pretty subtle scar, but God that hurt like a beach at the time. The dumbest part of this incident, despite the fact that my wrist had just audibly and excruciatingly sizzled, I somehow thought that the crisp skin that remained was a flake of toaster strudel that had fallen off, and proceeded to eat it. Me rinds did not taste good. It's not very visible anymore. When I was in kindergarten, I found out what a world record was. So I tried to be the first every kindergartner to do a front flip into a bathtub. Now, I've never even done a front flip. I was basing everything from my form to my execution of it on Power Rangers. So, it went about as good as you thought it would go. I jumped, face first, no tuck, roll, anything, into the sharp corner of the bathtub and busted my chin open. My twin sister was just standing there screaming and so was I. Blood was everywhere. And when my mom came in she looked horrified. Got my chin glued back together pretty much because I refused to get stitches or get it cauterized because they both sounded super painful. I've got a scar on my lip. Everyone thinks I've had a cleft before and had surgery on it. Reality, I was 3 running full force through the house and fell with a book in my hand. Sliced my lip right open on a paper cut. I still very much remember that moment. Everyone holding me down so they could clean the blood off my face, lol. Probably 5 or 6 years old, doing swimming lessons at a place in New Zealand. The pool had metal bars all around it a few cm under the water to be held onto when you were too short the water deeper. I was sort of jumping, bouncing in the shallow end listening to instructions and somehow lost my footing and fell with my chin slamming right down onto the bar and blood absolutely everywhere. I don't know how one manages to slip not just in a non-slip children's swimming lesson shallow pool, nor how I even managed to injure myself doing so, but I did, and I've got a tiny little scar under my chin to show for it. I didn't go back to the place for many years live overseas, but mother is Kiwi and we were on holiday, but eventually when I did, age 12 or 13, it turns out they removed the bars on all sides, even the deep end of the pool, because they were afraid my parents might sue. They never would have even considered it. One of the other kids in that swimming class actually asked why there was nothing to hold on to except for the rather difficult to reach ledge in the deep end, and the instructor explained my above story. They weren't aware that I was the infamous kid who caused all that trouble, so were quite shocked at my laughter. Have a scar on the inner part of my thigh from riding a bicycle. IDK exactly how, but I fell and the bike ripped my inner thigh to duck. Blood was everywhere. Had to get stitches. When they were doing that, I saw chunks of my flesh being pulled off from the needles. I remember being on the gurney in the hallway, 'cause the beach's hospital didn't have rooms, and my dumbers had the habit of wearing shorts without boxers, so I felt extra uncomfortable and weird. I was lying there, and I was scared af. I touched the outer part of the gashed wound, and I felt flesh. It's now a 5-inch scar, and one side of the scar is a little bit concaved. Supposedly that's the side that got ducked up the most, so the scar itself looks like it dips a little on the side. Doctor said 'cause I was chubby, my thick thighs saved me from getting my leg chopped off. Better yet, it saved me from getting my dong chopped off too. Point is, thick thighs saves lives. Edit. Added details. I have a scar from something dumb I did as an adult. I was working at a holiday resort and we were doing games in the pool which involved a hula hoop. My job was to get people enjoying it and having a good time. So to build the atmosphere I decided to do a dolphin dive through the hoop that my colleague was holding. What I didn't realize was that the water was only waist deep. I hit my head and shoulder on the bottom of the pool very hard and now sport a beautiful scar on my left temple. I feel lucky to be alive. I didn't study for an exam and I knew I was gonna fail. I faked having a stomachache and now I have a scar on my belly from an appendix operation. When I was 12, I was wheeling a grill up a hill. I wanted to bring it to my fort in the woods. Well, I lost my grip and one of the grill's leg came down, sliced my ankle. It was pretty deep too. I probably should have gotten stitches but was too embarrassed of the whole thing. So I washed it out, put Neosporin and wrapped my ankle with gauze. Repeated this for a month. Now I have a good sized scar. Edit. Thank you kind stranger for my first silver. Me and a few of my friends played a very intellectual game with a can of deodorant. You take a spray can, put it close to your skin, and spray it. The longest to last wins. Now all 4 of us have the same circular scar on our hands from the burn. Accidentally broke my grandmother's vase that was sitting on a table. Got burned with a cigarette. 15 years later scar is still there. Thanks grandma. Learning how to ride a bike when I was 6. I was in my house learning how to ride a bike when my mom told me there was nuggets for dinner. I crashed into something and hit my forehead on the wall. My mom came rushing towards me and I said, "Oh, it's fine." I touched my forehead and saw something red. I even have ketchup for the nuggets. My mother started crying of laughter. When she stopped, she brought me to the hospital and I just had some stitches. We then went to McDonald's so we still had nuggets. Long story short, don't ride a bike in your apartment, kids. Under my left eye I have a burn from when I wanted to test how hot the car cigarette lighter was. Full disclosure, I was an adult. I'd bought a new set of kitchen knives. Expensive ones. Very sharp. They were in individual sleeves, affixed to a plastic insert with a cable tie. I opened one with brute force. Then I used that one to cut the cable tie on another, except it cut through the cable tie much easier than anticipated, and I stabbed myself in the forearm. Was trying to unjam a big folding knife with a dog leash. Slipped when applying a lot of force and sliced into 3 of my fingers quite deep. Not fun. Also when I was about 1 year old, a massive clock fell onto my head and shattered. There were pieces of broken glass stuck in my head that had to be picked out. Luckily there weren't many scars and my hair grows fine. Ate a lot. Got fat. Lots of stretch marks. Child me should have eaten a duck and salad. Bumped into a kid taller than me while running in the corridor. He lost a teeth. I got a dent above my eyebrow. Sounds like you lost more than just skin there, laddie. I could have got the scar but made my brother take one for the team. I was going to get hit with a stool and to avoid it I ducked and allowed my brother to catch it on the back of his head. That scar is still there and he does not grow hair in that little area. It's not noticeable anymore though. Was playing with a knife and my dad came to say not to play with it. Continued to play with it and 3 minutes later I ran to him with a bleeding wound. I have scars on my corneas because my college housemate bought a ferret whose shit infected the water supply. Don't shower with contacts, kids. When I was somewhere around kindergarten age, I fell out of bed in the middle of the night and split my head open on a metal line running down the length of the floor. Started crying. Dad came and checked on me. Was told, "Oh, you'll be right, mate." and was sent back to bed. True Aussie parenting. Anyway, next day woke up with blood literally covering my pillow. Head still split open and still bleeding. Just above my eyebrow. Got rushed to the hospital. It was pretty deep, and told I'd need either stitches or to get it glued up. Being the naive 5-6-year-old I was, I thought that by glue, he meant he was literally going to glue my head up with a glue stick. Requested stitches. Doctor thought I was brave. Bonus points for me, but told me stitches would hurt. So he was gonna glue my head up instead. Went to school that day with an awesome battle scar to show all my friends. Almost 10 years later, I still have this battle scar and, suffice to say, it isn't that awesome anymore. Oh yeah, how'd you get that scar? Fell out of bed pretty badass. Am I right? Edit. Spelling mistakes. Got bit by a snake playing Steve Irwin when I was 6. Small scar on my hand. Have a scar from running into a door frame in a pitch black room. Maybe the second dumbest thing I did in my life. I climbed a trampoline and broke my pinky. I faced it with my back, put my hands on it and lifted myself up. Heard a crack and that was it. My mom thought I bruised it. It didn't hurt. The front knuckle just kind of hung down making it look swollen. 4 weeks later the bruise was still there and we went to see a doctor. Turned out I had broken my front knuckle in such a way that the tendon that normally supports the front of the finger had gotten loose and required an operation to be reattached. I still have the scars from the operation. I was about 6 or 7, and I had a pair of scissors I wasn't supposed to have. They were my mom's fabric shears, and had super sharp blades, you know, the all metal type, 80s style. Well, I didn't want to give them back because I was using them to cut up her sheet, I believe. So, strike 2. So I ran from her. We were going in circles around the little divider wall between our kitchen and living room like Tom and Jerry LOL. Her screaming at me to please stop running, and me running even harder and laughing like a maniac. I have no idea WTF I was thinking, since I knew an ass whipping was imminent for not only disrespecting my mama, but running with said scissors. In my memory now, it's comical. At the time, I was scared to death. Then my dad came home, and I really panicked. I just knew I was about to get my bells rung. So I tossed the scissors straight up in the air as I was running. Smart, right? I was in self-preservation mode at the time, doing anything to avoid the inevitable. They boomeranged back towards me, and one of the blades hit me in the foot like a FKN javelin. OMG the pain. And it bled forever, it seemed. I'm now in my 40s and I still have that scar on my foot. Shaped like a little moon. SMH. FKN kids. I swear. When I was around 10 I was just playing soccer with some of my neighbors. We were playing penalties and when it was my turn I picked up the ball and carried it over to shoot my shot per se. I put the ball down on the ground. Took my usual 3 steps back and did my little ritual, mostly me just doing a silly little slap on my cheeks and thighs so it looked like I knew what I was doing. I take 2 steps as I focus on the ball, 1 more and I look up at the goalkeeper. POW. I end up kicking the back of my calf with my big toe and manage to break the toe. I just didn't have the greatest motor skills in the world. 2-minute noodles in a bowl while sitting on the couch. I had them balancing between my knees and stomach. My dad came out from the hallway and I turned around to speak to him, spilling the bowl of boiling water all down my front. I remember my parents rushing me into the shower. My stomach blistered within seconds. Cue the emergency room visit. I had 2nd-degree burns. I remember I had to go back every few days and have the skin removed. Had to lather my body in this ointment that stunk, and then cling wrap my entire midsection to where any clothing items on my upper body fabric could not come into contact. I only started eating instant noodles a year afterwards. When I have a super hot shower or get sunburned, I can still see these blotchy red blobs on my stomach. I sliced my thumb with the garden scissors once because I was trying to chop up a root. I have some faint white scars on my arm from when I was a teenager. I'd been putting out matches on my tongue after a few drinks and thought if I licked my arm I could also put them out there. Woke up with burns and regret. 6 months later I tried it again when drunk because I thought I just did it wrong the first time. I like to think I'm smarter now. frozen plastic bottle in microwave and it melted. Then as I opened the door and put it on the bench it fell on my leg and I got 3rd-degree burns. Duck me, such an idiot. I have a huge scar on my elbow from a nasty burn, but not from what you would expect. I was on vacation with my family and we stopped by Mount Rushmore. There was this alpine slide that was a tourist attraction and sounded fun, so we went to try it out. Now, the slide used these carts that remind me of the carts we all used in gym class when we all in elementary school, except that had a lever as a brake to control speed. Now, my dumber think I can zoom down the hill and I get to a curve that was way too sharp for my speed. Now is a good time to mention that the sides of the slide are this glassy material dotted around like sandpaper to reduce friction. I tipped over on the curve and in order to prevent from flipped out and tumbling down the hill, my elbow and shoulder pushed back on the slide of the wall. Now my elbow was completely shredded, leaving a very raw area of skin fairly deep and also burned it. My shoulder was spared, but the friction from the heat caused the synthetic fabric to melt and flatten out in a small area that made contact. That sucker hurt and took nearly 6 months to really heal completely, and now I have this lumpy mass of scar tissue on my elbow that looks kind of tumorish in a way. But I learned my lesson to not be a reckless dumbass and respect gravity speed more. Had a penchant for playing balance beams on anything. Any sort of raised small foothold, I'm going to go walk across it. Early morning on way to preschool, walked across a parking divider, you know, the concrete slabs at the end of parking spaces. Mom told me not to. Sure enough, boom, I fell and smashed face into concrete. Had to get like 44 stitches in my lip. Have a real prominent scar to this day. I always make up some good story to explain it instead of the truth that I tried to assault the ground with my face and lost. Bro, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.